It's 1969.
I got my next job all cut out for me.
This is the first live-action Spider-Man film. It's a 12-minute long, unauthorized student film, written, produced, and directed by Donald F. Glut, which is an awesome name, by the way.
Your father's dead, but you're safe, and so is the world.
That was the first. Here's the rest. So the first official live-action Spider-Man was a TV movie back in 1977. It was very 1977. They're ninjas. But that was TV. After the success of Superman the movie, Marvel Comics godfather Stan Lee was determined to turn his characters into big Hollywood films. So in 1985, Marvel struck a deal with Cannon Films, the studio behind movies like Superman 4: The Quest for Peace and Chuck Norris's Missing in Action.
Within this unsuspecting city, history's greatest experiment creates tomorrow's greatest superhero. Spider-Man, the movie. A live-action spectacular directed by Joe Zito.
It never happened. Over the course of 15 years, Spider-Man bounces from director to director, company to company, with bankruptcies and lawsuits, and hey, even James Cameron almost made a Spider-Man film. But then in 1999, everything gets smoothed over. Sony Pictures gets the rights, they hire Evil Dead director Sam Raimi, and we get 2002's Spider... Wait, thank you. Okay, I've been passed a note that says I've forgotten 3 Dev Adam, aka 3 Giant Men, aka Captain America and Santo versus Spider-Man, aka Turkish Spider-Man. No, wait. So there's a Japanese Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. 私の復讐を父の復讐を撃てモンスター教授
2002's Spider-Man, starring the villain from Molly's Game. As Mary Jane Watson, it's one half of the team that brought down Nixon. As Harry Osborn, Peter's rich best friend and Mary Jane's boyfriend, it's a slightly healthier looking Tommy Wiseau, with a supporting cast of lots of 25-year-olds playing teenagers. And playing Peter's boss, J. Jonah Jameson, we have Mr. Farmer's Insurance himself. You know how this goes. Boy is bitten by spider, gains slam and bod, loses uncle, maintains aunt. There's a few changes though, like that instead of being a boy genius who invents webbing and web shooters, Peter Parker is a boy genius with disgusting holes in his wrist that shoot webbing. James Cameron idea, by the way. Also in this cinematic universe, cell phones have dial tones. The villain is Harry's father, Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, played by Willem Dafoe at his Willem Dafoeist. He's a billionaire scientist bent on revenge and rampant property damage.
Takes the pictures of Spider-Man.
I don't know who he is. This stuff comes in the mail.
You're lying.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
The Green Goblin disrupts World Unity Day, my favorite holiday, by the way, which featured an outdoor Macy Gray concert. Again, this film came out in 2002. At some point, this happens. In the end, there's a tribute to a famous scene from the Spider-Man comics. The Green Goblin self-owns.
Oh.
Harry blames Spider-Man.
One day Spider-Man will pay.
And Peter friend-zones himself.
I will always be your friend.
The movie was a monster at the box office. It made a then record $114 million in its opening weekend. To this day, with $403 million in domestic box office, it's still the most successful Spider-Man film ever made. Not only that, the soundtrack spawned an iconic hit single that everyone still loves. 2004's Spider-Man 2 brings back the cast and adds Alfred Molina as a good-natured and kind scientist named Otto Octavius.
I finally got lucky in love.
Dr. Octavius has developed a set of artificial intelligence-driven mechanical arms tapped directly into his brain, and surely nothing bad can happen. Meet Dr. Octopus. Meanwhile, Harry's being a real buzzkill, Mary Jane is about to marry an astronaut, and Peter Parker, losing his mojo, questioning whether he should be Spider-Man no more. In the end, we see how shredded Toby really is. He goes crowd surfing. Doc Ock sacrifices himself for the greater good. Harry finds out about Peter. Mary Jane finds out about Peter. And your boy Toby gets the girl. Spider-Man 2 was another massive success. It's one of the best superhero films ever made. It was the second highest grossing movie of 2004, right behind Shrek 2.
Come on, donkey.
Spider-Man 3, 2007. So director Sam Raimi wanted to make a movie with the Sandman as a villain. Sony wanted him to make a movie about fan favorite Venom. Spider-Man 2 left off with a vengeful Harry raiding his dad's man cave. So they went with all three. We've got Lowell from Wings playing Sandman, a career criminal who may have been involved in Uncle Ben's death and whose DNA gets infused with sand because Comic books. We've got noted film editor Topher Grace playing photographer Eddie Brock, who's out to stick it to Peter.
I am going to be taking shots of you for the Bugle.
And we got Harry, who's been hitting his dad's sauna. Hey, let's add more characters, like a famous redhead playing Spider-Man's blonde love interest Gwen Stacy. An alien parasite infects Peter, giving him bonus powers, a new hairstyle, a new fashion sense. Also, this is something that happens. So Peter sheds the black suit, which finds an ally in Eddie Brock, creating Venom. Sandman and Venom team up to take down Spider-Man. Harry and Peter patch things up right before Harry bites it. Venom gets Topher disgraced. Sandman's not so bad, is just dust in the wind. And Peter has one last dance with Mary Jane. So Spider-Man 3, it did well. It was the third highest grossing movie of 2007, beating Shrek the Third, so it was clearly a popular movie. So popular that Sony decided not to proceed with Spider-Man 4. They bring in director Marc Webb to oversee a reboot series that began with 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man. Starring the co-founder of Facebook as Peter, as Gwen Stacy, another famous redhead playing a love interest that does not have red hair, and Spike from Notting Hill as scientist Kurt Connors, whose experiments turn him into the Lizard. The movie retells Spider-Man's origin, which we needed, but it adds in a mystery about Peter's parents that will completely get resolved. Also, importantly, Peter does not have weird oozing holes in his wrists. However, he does do lots of skateboarding and parkour when he's giddy. The Amazing Spider-Man did good. The reviews were great. It earned $262 million at the box office, but that's also less than any of the 3 Raimi films. 2014, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 gives us more background on the mystery surrounding the death of Peter's parents, which will totally get resolved. It adds Peter's friend Harry Osborn, who turns into the Green Goblin because that's just what he does. And it adds Jamie Foxx as Electro, who's given his powers thanks to genetically engineered electric eels, which is somehow a weirder origin than the comic book version.
I don't know what's going on with me. I can see that. I believe you.
Also, because we need more villains, we have Paul Giamatti. There he is. That is Paul Giamatti. And yes, for those of you keeping score, that's 2 actors from Sideways who've played Spider-Man villains. Sandra Oh, you next. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 does fine. It makes $202 million at the box office. That's even less than the last one. But meanwhile, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is kind of a big deal. And the folks over there, they kind of wish they still owned the rights to Spider-Man. Sony has just zero interest in relinquishing their hold on Peter Parker. In fact, they start working on a whole expanded universe of films based on Spider-Man's villains. And then Sony makes a movie called The Interview.
Thanks to the recent Sony Pictures hacking, we're now learning that talks between Sony and Marvel's parent company, Walt Disney, did in fact happen, with the Wall Street Journal revealing that an October 30th email which laid out a
yada, yada, yada. It happens.
Oh, Mr. Parker.
The Amazing Spider-Man series is closed, and we're introduced for the 3rd time this century to Peter Parker and his elderly Aunt May. He debuts in Captain America: Civil War, and his plot boils down to a billionaire convincing a child to go with him to Germany without telling his guardian. By the way, it's retroactively now canon that Peter and Tony Stark teamed up years earlier in Iron Man 2. That brings us to Spider-Man: Homecoming. Directed by John Watts, it resets Peter as a high school student who dreams of being an Avenger like his idol, Tony Stark, who's given Peter some upgraded duds and encouraged him to be
Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
We meet Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, a bad man with wings like a bird, played by a Batman and a Birdman, Michael Keaton, who's awesome in this.
Oh, Spider-Man.
By the end, Spider-Man gets his shot at the Avengers and a really fancy new suit, which he declines because he's a child. Spider-Man: Homecoming played big at the box office. It made $334 million. That's more than either of the Amazing Spider-Man films. And it led to his next stop in the MCU, Avengers: Infinity War. Are you familiar? Peter just wants to help out, and he gets dragged to an alien planet where...
I don't feel so good.
You're all right.
I don't know what's happening. I don't know. I don't want to go. I don't want to go, sir. Please. Please, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
When they say that a hero can save us, I'm not gonna stand here and wait.
You've seen Avengers Endgame. And now he's back, far from home, having skipped ahead 5 years, wearing new threads, and making friends with Bubble Boy. So in 2018, after years and years of development, Spider-Man arch nemesis Venom finally got a solo film, entirely free of puny Parker and starring Tom Hardy doing some sort of accent.
You gonna eat anybody else?
Most likely.
Oh, God.
Then a month or so later, the guys behind 21 Jump Street and the Lego Movie oversaw an animated film called Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, Spider people abound, but the film is primarily focused on a new Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Into the Spider-Verse is a miracle, a virtually perfect film, not just one of the best superhero movies ever made, it's just really one of the best movies, period. Go see Into the Spider-Verse. Okay, so that's it. 50 years of live-action Spider-Man with decades more power and responsibility to come. What's next? Who knows?
I'm going to miss him. Yeah, we were friends, you know.
Can I return it if it doesn't fit?
It always fits. Eventually.